The sound of thunder rolled across the Nevada plains like cannon fire, and Victoria Hayes knew she had made a terrible mistake leaving Carson City before dawn. Rain hammered down in sheets so thick she could barely see her horse's ears, and the wind cut through her traveling cloak as if it were made of paper. She had been foolish to think she could reach Gold Hill before the storm broke, foolish to believe her desperate need to escape would somehow bend the weather to her will. Now she was paying for that hubris, soaked to the bone and shivering so hard her teeth chattered loud enough to hear over the storm. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a dark shape ahead. A building, maybe a barn or abandoned shack. Victoria urged her mare forward, fighting against the animal's instinct to turn away from the wind. Her fingers were so numb she could barely feel the reins anymore. The building grew larger as they approached, and she saw it was indeed a barn, weathered but still standing, with one door hanging open like a welcoming arm. She dismounted clumsily, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. Leading her horse inside took the last of her strength. The relief from the wind was immediate, though rain still found its way through gaps in the roof. Victoria stood there gasping, water streaming from her hair and clothes, forming a puddle at her feet. Her horse shook herself vigorously, spraying more water across the dim interior. "Easy there, girl," Victoria murmured, her voice hoarse. She fumbled with the saddle cinch, but her frozen fingers refused to cooperate. Tears of frustration mixed with the rain on her face. Everything had gone wrong. Everything. Her engagement to Walter Morrison had seemed like a blessing 3 months ago, a way to secure her future after her father's death left her penniless. But then she had discovered the truth about Walter's first wife, about the bruises the woman had tried to hide, about the fear in her eyes before she died in that convenient accident. Victoria's own maid had warned her, risking her position to whisper the truth. And Victoria had believed her, because she had already begun to see the cruelty beneath Walter's charming facade. So she had run. Taken the small amount of money she had left and fled in the night, heading for Gold Hill where her mother's cousin supposedly lived. She had never met the woman, but it was the only place she could think to go. Now she was alone in a barn, freezing and frightened, wondering if she would even survive the night. "Need some help with that," Victoria spun around with a gasp, her hand flying to her chest. A man stood just inside the barn door, leading a massive bay stallion. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with water streaming from his wide-brimmed hat. Even in the dim light, she could see concern in his eyes rather than threat. "I did not hear you come in," Victoria said, hating how her voice trembled. She took an involuntary step backward. The man stopped immediately, raising one hand in a calming gesture. "Did not mean to startle you, miss. Name's Samuel Armstrong. Been riding for 2 hours looking for shelter. This storm came up mighty fierce." His voice was deep and steady, with a slight drawl that spoke of Texas or maybe Arkansas. "Victoria Hayes," she managed, though she immediately wondered if she should have given a false name. What if Walter had sent men after her? What if this stranger worked for him? Samuel seemed to sense her fear. He kept his distance, moving slowly as he led his horse to the far side of the barn. "I will stay over here, Miss Hayes. You have my word you are safe." A woman alone in a storm has enough to worry about without fearing the man who shares her shelter. Something in his tone, perhaps the genuine respect in it, made Victoria relax slightly. She turned back to her mare and tried again to undo the cinch. Her fingers still would not work properly. "Would you like me to help with that?" Samuel asked. "I can talk you through it if you prefer not to have me close." Pride warred with practicality, pride lost. "I would appreciate the help," Victoria admitted. "My hands are too cold." Samuel approached slowly, telegraphing his movements. He was older than she had first thought, probably close to 30, with a few days' worth of dark stubble on his jaw and kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners. His hands were large and weathered but surprisingly gentle as he loosened the cinch and lifted the saddle from her mare's back. "There you go," he said, stepping back immediately. "You should rub her down if you can manage it. Get her blood moving. Same goes for you. Moving around will help you warm up faster than standing still. Thank you." Victoria found a relatively dry piece of cloth in her saddlebag and began working on her horse. Her hands gradually began to cooperate as she moved. Across the barn, Samuel did the same with his stallion, humming quietly under his breath. Thunder boomed overhead, closer this time. Victoria's mare shifted nervously and she placed a soothing hand on the animal's neck. "It is all right, Daisy. We are safe here." "Pretty mare," Samuel commented. "Looks like she has some Arabian in her." "My father bred her dam to an Arabian stud 5 years ago," Victoria said, grateful for the distraction of ordinary conversation. "Daisy was the result. He gave her to me for my 18th birthday." "That is a fine gift. Your father sounds like a good man." He was. The past tense slipped out before she could stop it. Samuel glanced at her, then away, respecting her privacy. "I am sorry for your loss." They worked in silence for a while, the storm raging outside. Victoria's clothes were plastered to her skin, and she was still shivering despite the movement. Samuel had draped his own coat over his saddle to dry and was working in his vest and shirt, which were equally soaked. "We should probably try to get a fire going," Samuel said eventually. "There is a small stove in the corner there. Looks like someone used this barn regularly once. Might be some dry wood if we are lucky." Victoria had not even noticed the stove. Samuel investigated it while she finished with Daisy, and he made a small sound of triumph. "Wood box still has some pieces that are dry enough, and there are some old blankets up in the loft, looks like. They are dusty but dry." "This is remarkably good fortune," Victoria said. "In my experience, you take the luck you can get and do not question it too hard." Samuel began building a fire in the stove, his movements practiced and efficient. Soon smoke began to curl up through the pipe that extended through the roof, and then small flames caught and grew. The warmth was heavenly. Victoria moved closer, holding her hands out to the heat. Samuel climbed up to the loft and returned with several old wool blankets that smelled of dust and age but were blessedly dry. "You should get out of those wet clothes, Miss Hayes," he said, then quickly added, "I will turn my back and tend the horses. You can wrap up in the blankets. Your clothes can dry by the fire." The suggestion made sense even though the situation was wildly improper, but propriety seemed less important than survival at the moment. "All right," Victoria agreed. "Thank you for being a gentleman about it." Samuel turned his back and moved to the far side of the barn, speaking softly to the horses. Victoria quickly stripped off her soaked dress, petticoats, and undergarments, wringing what water she could from them before draping them over the few pieces of furniture near the stove. She wrapped herself in 2 of the blankets, creating a cocoon that finally began to trap some warmth against her skin. "You can turn around now," she called out. Samuel glanced back, then nodded with approval. "Much better. You were turning blue around the edges there." He grabbed his own dry blanket. "I am going to do the same if you will afford me the same courtesy." Victoria turned to face the fire, listening to the rustle of fabric behind her. The intimacy of the situation suddenly struck her. She was alone in a barn with a strange man, both of them undressed, with a storm raging outside. If anyone discovered them, her reputation would be destroyed beyond all repair. Not that it mattered much, she supposed. Walter had probably already spread whatever lies he wanted about her broken engagement. She had nothing left to lose. "All done," Samuel said. He came to sit by the fire, keeping a respectful distance. His blanket was wrapped around his waist and shoulders, leaving his chest bare. Victoria tried not to notice the lean muscle there, the scatter of scars that spoke of a hard life. "So, Miss Hayes, what brings you out in weather like this, if you do not mind my asking?" Victoria debated how much to tell him. "I am traveling to Gold Hill. I have family there. In this storm." "Must be urgent family business. You could say that." She pulled the blankets tighter around herself. "And you, what brings you out in this weather?" Samuel smiled slightly. "Heading to Gold Hill myself, as it happens. I have a job waiting there. Going to be working on the Harper Ranch, managing their cattle operations." "I did not know there was a ranch near Gold Hill." "About 5 miles south of town. Big operation from what I hear. They lost their previous foreman to a mining accident 3 weeks back, and they need someone who knows cattle. I have been working ranches since I was 14, so I figure I am qualified." "That is quite young to start working," Victoria observed. "My father died when I was 13. Needed to help support my mother and sisters." Samuel poked at the fire, sending sparks dancing up. "But that was a long time ago. My sisters are all married now, and my mother passed 5 years back. It is just me now. I am sorry. It seems we have both lost people. Seems so." Samuel looked at her directly, and Victoria was struck by the warmth in his eyes. "But we are still here, and that counts for something." Thunder crashed overhead, making Victoria jump. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Samuel stood and checked on the horses, giving them each a handful of grain from a nearly empty barrel he had found in the corner. "Not much, but it is something," he told them. When he returned to the fire, he was carrying Victoria's saddlebags. "Figured you might have some food in here." "I have some jerky and hardtack in mine. Not fancy, but it will keep us going," Victoria nodded. "I have some bread and cheese. We can share." They laid out their meager supplies between them. The bread had gotten somewhat damp, but the cheese was fine. Samuel's jerky was tough but flavorful. They ate slowly, making the food last, neither of them sure when they would have their next meal. "Can I ask you something, Miss Hayes?" Samuel said after a while. "And you can tell me to mind my own business if you want. Go ahead. You are running from something, are you not? Or someone?" Victoria's hands stilled. She looked up at him, trying to read his expression. "What makes you say that?" "Just a feeling. The way you startled when I came in. How you did not want to give your name at first. The fact that you are traveling alone without proper supplies." His expression was gentle, not accusing. "I have seen folks running before. Sometimes from the law, sometimes from people worse than the law." For a long moment, Victoria considered lying. Then she decided she was tired of lies, tired of hiding. "I was engaged," she said quietly, "to a man named Walter Morrison in Carson City. He seemed kind at first, generous and attentive. But then I learned the truth about him, about what happened to his first wife. I broke the engagement and left before he could hurt me too." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Did he hurt you? Before you left?" "Not physically, but the way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I was not paying attention, it frightened me." Victoria drew her knees up under the blankets. "Everyone said I was foolish to refuse him. He is wealthy, well-connected, but I could not do it. I could not marry a man I feared." "That is not foolish," Samuel said firmly. "That is smart. A woman should not have to fear her husband. A man who would hurt a woman is no man at all in my book." The conviction in his voice warmed Victoria more than the fire. "Thank you for saying that. I mean it." Samuel was quiet for a moment, then added, "My father used to beat my mother. Not often, but enough. I was too young to stop him when I was small. By the time I was old enough, big enough, He was already sick with the consumption that killed him. I used to lie awake at night wishing I could have protected her better. That was not your fault. You were a child. I know. Took me a long time to understand that, though. Samuel met her eyes, but I made myself a promise back then. I would never raise my hand to a woman, and I would never stand by and let another man do it either. Some promises you keep your whole life. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Here was a man who had known violence and chosen gentleness, who had known hardship and chosen kindness. In her world of drawing rooms and social calls, she had never met anyone quite like Samuel Armstrong. "You are a good man," she said softly. Samuel looked embarrassed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I just try to do right when I can. Does not always work out, but I try." The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the barn, Victoria felt safer than she had in months. They talked as their clothes slowly dried, sharing stories of their lives. Samuel told her about growing up in Arkansas, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the ranches he had worked from Texas to Colorado. Victoria spoke of her childhood in Virginia, of moving to Nevada after her mother died, of her father's struggle to establish himself as a merchant in Carson City. "He worked himself into the ground," Victoria said, staring into the flames, "trying to give me the life my mother had wanted. The fine dresses, the social connections, the prospect of a good marriage, and it killed him. He had a stroke behind the counter of his store. The doctor said the strain on his heart was just too much. That must have been hard to lose him that way. The worst part was knowing he did it all for me, and I did not even want those things. Not really. I would have been happy to live simply if it meant having more time with him." Victoria wiped at her eyes. "And then I nearly let his sacrifice be for nothing by agreeing to marry Walter. I was so afraid of being poor, of being alone, that I almost made a terrible mistake." "But you did not make it," Samuel pointed out. "You saw the truth and got out. That takes courage. It feels more like cowardice. I ran away in the night. Sometimes running is the bravest thing you can do." Samuel shifted, adjusting his blanket. "I ran once from a ranch in Texas. The owner was cheating the workers, paying half what he promised and keeping men there through debt. I saw what was happening and left in the night, just like you. Felt like a coward for months. But then I learned that after I left, 3 other men found the courage to leave too. Sometimes you have to save yourself before you can help anyone else." Victoria had never thought of it that way. "Did those men find better work?" "I ran into one of them in Colorado a year later. He had a good job on a horse ranch and had brought his family out from Mexico. Said leaving that place in Texas was the best decision he ever made." Samuel smiled. "So sometimes running works out all right in the end." The fire crackled between them, and outside the storm began to ease slightly. The thunder grew more distant, though the rain continued steady. Samuel added another piece of wood to the stove. "We should try to get some sleep. Storm might blow itself out by morning, and then we can ride on to Gold Hill." "Together?" Victoria asked, then felt foolish. "I mean, if you are going that way anyway." "I think that would be wise," Samuel said carefully. 2 riders are safer than one, and if this Walter fellow has sent anyone after you, well, you should not be alone." The thought of Walter sending men after her had crossed Victoria's mind more than once. He was proud and vindictive, and she had wounded that pride by refusing him. "I would appreciate the company," she admitted. Samuel arranged some old hay into a makeshift bed on one side of the fire and lay down, keeping his blanket wrapped firmly around himself. Victoria did the same on the other side, using her saddle as a pillow. The position was hardly comfortable, but after the stress of the day, exhaustion pulled at her. "Miss Hayes," Samuel's voice came through the darkness. "Yes, you are safe here. I will keep watch for a while, make sure the fire stays going. You rest. Thank you, Samuel. The use of his first name felt natural, even though they had only met hours ago. For everything. You are welcome, Victoria. Hearing him say her name sent a little flutter through her chest. She closed her eyes, listening to the rain on the roof and the quiet breathing of the horses. Despite everything, despite the uncertainty and fear that had driven her from Carson City, she felt peaceful. Safe in a way she had not felt in Walter's presence, even at the beginning when he had been on his best behavior. She must have slept because when she woke, gray dawn light was filtering through the gaps in the barn walls. The rain had stopped, though she could hear water dripping from the eaves. Samuel was already up, dressed in his dried clothes, feeding the horses. "Good morning," he said when he noticed her stirring. "Storm passed about an hour ago. I checked outside. The road will be muddy but passable." Victoria sat up, clutching her blankets around her. Her own clothes were draped near the stove, mostly dry. "I should get dressed. I will be outside checking the wheels on what looks like an old wagon. Take your time." Samuel grabbed his hat and stepped out into the morning, closing the door behind him. Victoria dressed quickly in the privacy he had given her. Her clothes were wrinkled and still slightly damp in places, but they would do. She braided her hair and pinned it up as best she could without a mirror. When she opened the door, she found Samuel inspecting the barn's exterior. "Roof held better than I expected," he commented. Someone built this place to last. The landscape around them was transformed by the storm. The desert, usually brown and dusty, had turned various shades of green and gray. Puddles reflected the lightening sky. The air smelled of wet sage and creosote. "It is beautiful," Victoria said. Samuel turned to look, as if seeing it through her eyes. "I suppose it is. Easy to forget to notice things like that." They saddled their horses and set out toward Gold Hill. The road was indeed muddy, and they had to pick their way carefully, but the morning was cool and pleasant after the heat of the previous day. Samuel kept his horse at an easy walk beside Daisy, never pushing ahead or falling behind. "Tell me about your mother's cousin," Samuel said after they had been riding for about an hour. "The one in Gold Hill." "I do not know much about her," Victoria admitted. "Her name is Eleanor Harper. She married a rancher about 15 years ago, and my mother lost touch with her after we moved west. But I found an old letter among my father's papers that mentioned the Harper Ranch near Gold Hill, so I thought I would try to find her." Samuel reined in his horse abruptly. "Eleanor Harper. On the Harper Ranch south of Gold Hill. Yes, do you know her?" "That is the ranch I am supposed to work at." Samuel laughed, shaking his head. "Of all the luck, I will be working for your cousin. Second cousin, technically, or something like that. Family trees always confused me." Victoria felt a surge of relief. If Samuel was going to be working at the Harper Ranch, then she would see him again after today. That thought pleased her more than it probably should. They continued on, talking more easily now. Samuel told her about the cattle business, about the differences between ranching and farming, about the wild horses he had helped break over the years. Victoria found herself fascinated by his stories, by the life he described that was so different from her own experience. "Have you ever thought about doing something else?" she asked. "Something less dangerous, like what?" "Shopkeeping," Samuel grinned. "I am not cut out for indoor work. I like being out under the sky working with animals, a horse or a cow, you know, where you stand with them. They are honest in a way people often are not." "I suppose that is true. What about you? What did you do before all this?" Victoria thought about it. "Nothing, really. I mean, I managed my father's household after my mother died. I could sew and cook and keep accounts. But I never worked, not the way you mean. Ladies do not in my social circle. But you could if you needed to. I suppose I will find out, will I not? I doubt my cousin will be able to support me indefinitely out of charity. I will need to find some way to earn my keep. Something tells me you will figure it out just fine, Samuel said. You are tougher than you think. Victoria was not sure she believed him, but she appreciated the confidence nonetheless. They rode on, and the sun climbed higher. Around midday, they stopped by a creek to water the horses and eat the last of their food. Gold Hill should be just over that rise, Samuel said, pointing ahead. Another hour or so. Victoria felt her stomach clench with nervousness. What if Eleanor Harper did not remember her mother? What if she refused to take Victoria in? What if Walter had somehow gotten word ahead and poisoned people against her? You look worried, Samuel observed. I am, Victoria admitted. I am about to throw myself on the mercy of a woman I have never met. What if she turns me away? Samuel was quiet for a moment, then said, If she does, which I doubt, you could probably find work in town. A woman who can read and write and keep accounts, that is valuable. Maybe work at the general store or something. You are not without options. And you do not think people would judge me for running away from an engagement? Some might. But anyone worth knowing will understand when you explain the circumstances. Samuel looked at her seriously. And if it helps, I will vouch for you. Tell Mrs. Harper and anyone else that you are a woman of good character who helped me through a difficult situation. That is generous of you. It is the truth. Samuel stood and offered her his hand to help her up. Victoria took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. For a moment they stood close together, his hand still holding hers. Something passed between them, an understanding, a connection that went beyond the practical circumstances that had thrown them together. Samuel released her hand slowly. We should get moving. They rode up over the rise, and Gold Hill spread out before them. It was smaller than Carson City, a collection of buildings clustered around the mining operations that had given the town its name. Even from a distance, Victoria could hear the stamp mills pounding away, processing ore from the mines. Not much to look at, Samuel commented, but I hear it is a decent place, not as rough as some mining towns. They rode down the main street, drawing a few curious glances from townspeople. Samuel stopped at the general store to ask directions to the Harper Ranch, and the clerk pointed them south out of town. About 5 miles that way. Big gate with an H burned into the crossbar. Cannot miss it. The ride to the ranch seemed both too long and too short. Victoria's nervousness grew with each mile. What would she say to Eleanor Harper? How did you ask a stranger for help? The ranch, when they reached it, was impressive. The gate was indeed marked with a large H, and beyond it stretched a well-maintained property with corrals, outbuildings, and a substantial 2-story house. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and Victoria could see several men working with horses in one of the corrals. Here we go, Samuel said quietly. They rode up to the house, and before they could dismount, the front door opened. A woman stepped out onto the porch, wiping her hands on an apron. She was in her 40s, with dark hair streaked with gray and sharp blue eyes that took in the scene quickly. Can I help you? She called out. Mrs. Harper, Samuel called back. I am Samuel Armstrong. I believe you are expecting me to start as your foreman. Mr. Armstrong, yes, you are a day later than we expected. The woman's gaze shifted to Victoria. And who is this? Victoria dismounted, smoothing her wrinkled dress. Mrs. Harper, my name is Victoria Hayes. I believe you are my mother's cousin. Your maiden name was Eleanor Thornton. Eleanor's stern expression softened immediately. Thornton, yes, and your mother was Lillian. Yes, madam. Good Lord. Eleanor came down the porch steps. You look just like her. I have not seen Lillian since before she married your father and moved east. How is she? She passed away 6 years ago, Victoria said quietly. I am so sorry. Eleanor's eyes were kind. And your father, last year. Eleanor did not ask any more questions. She simply opened her arms and Victoria found herself pulled into a warm embrace. You poor child. Well, you are family and family is always welcome here. She pulled back, looking Victoria over. You look exhausted and your dress is ruined. What happened? We got caught in the storm yesterday, Samuel explained. Sheltered in an abandoned barn about 10 miles north of here. Miss Hayes was traveling alone and I offered to escort her the rest of the way. Eleanor's expression sharpened, clearly reading between the lines. Traveling alone in a storm. That must have been frightening. She looked at Samuel with new respect. Thank you for taking care of my cousin, Mr. Armstrong. It was no trouble, madam. She helped me as much as I helped her. Well, come inside, both of you. You look like you could use a hot meal and proper rest. Eleanor ushered them toward the house. Robert, she called out. Robert, come take these horses. A young man, probably 15 or 16, came running from the barn. Eleanor gave him quick instructions about the horses, then shepherded Victoria and Samuel into the house. The interior was comfortable and well kept, with sturdy furniture and colorful rugs on the wooden floors. The smell of bread baking filled the air. Eleanor led them to a large kitchen where an older woman was working at the stove. Martha, we have guests. This is Mr. Armstrong, our new foreman, and Miss Hayes, my cousin from back east. They need feeding. Martha, who had the look of someone who had been cooking for ranch hands for decades, simply nodded and began pulling out plates. Sit down, both of you. Stew is ready, and the bread will be out in a minute. Victoria sank into a chair at the large wooden table, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Samuel sat across from her, looking equally tired but trying to maintain propriety. Eleanor poured them each a cup of coffee and sat down at the head of the table. Now, Victoria, I want you to tell me the whole story. What brings you to Nevada, traveling alone in weather like yesterday? Victoria looked at Samuel, who gave her an encouraging nod. She took a deep breath and began. She told Eleanor everything about her father's death, about the engagement to Walter, about discovering the truth and running away. Eleanor listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker as the story progressed. When Victoria finished, Eleanor was silent for a long moment. Then she said, You did exactly the right thing. I knew a woman once who married a man like that, despite the warnings. He killed her within a year and everyone called it an accident. She reached across the table and squeezed Victoria's hand. You are safe here. This is your home now for as long as you need it. Relief washed over Victoria so intensely she felt tears spring to her eyes. Thank you. I promise I will earn my keep. I can help with housework, cooking, whatever you need. We will figure all that out later. Right now you need rest. Eleanor turned to Samuel. Mr. Armstrong, my foreman's quarters are in the building behind the barn. It is small but comfortable. I will have one of the men show you once you have finished eating. Thank you, madam. Samuel met Victoria's eyes across the table. Miss Hayes, it was an honor to meet you. I hope you find the peace you are looking for here. Thank you, Samuel. Victoria wished she could say more, wished she could express how much his kindness had meant to her. For everything. Martha brought bowls of rich beef stew and thick slices of fresh bread. Victoria could not remember the last time food had tasted so good. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, listening as Eleanor asked Samuel about his experience with cattle. He answered her questions competently, and Victoria could see Eleanor warming to him. You come with good references, Eleanor said, pulling a letter from her apron pocket. The Hendersons in Colorado spoke very highly of you. They were good people to work for, Samuel said. I hated to leave, but my youngest sister needed help setting up her household in California, and I had promised my mother I would look after the girls. By the time I got her settled, the Hendersons had already hired someone else. Well, their loss is our gain. I need someone who can manage 30 men and several hundred head of cattle. My husband passed 2 years ago, and the ranch has been struggling without his leadership. Our last foreman was competent, but not leadership material. Eleanor's expression was businesslike now. I cannot run this place on my own forever. I need someone I can trust. I will do my best to earn that trust, madam. After they finished eating, Eleanor showed Samuel out to meet the ranch hands while Martha led Victoria upstairs to a small but comfortable bedroom. "You rest now," Martha said kindly. "Mrs. Harper will want to talk more tomorrow, but for now, you just sleep." Victoria did not need to be told twice. She removed her boots and lay down on the bed, not even bothering to undress further. Within moments, she was asleep. She woke to darkness and the sound of voices downstairs. For a moment, she was disoriented, not remembering where she was. Then it came back to her, the storm, Samuel, the ride to the ranch. She sat up, running her hands through her tangled hair. Someone had left a pitcher of water and a basin on the dresser, along with a clean towel. Victoria washed her face and hands, feeling more human. When she made her way downstairs, she found Eleanor sitting at the kitchen table with an account book spread in front of her. The older woman looked up and smiled. "There you are, feeling better, much better. What time is it? Nearly 7 in the evening. You slept most of the day, but you clearly needed it." Eleanor closed the account book. "Martha saved you some supper. You must be hungry." Victoria was indeed hungry. Martha heated up leftover stew and brought out more fresh bread. As Victoria ate, Eleanor studied her with those sharp blue eyes. "Your mother and I were very close as girls," Eleanor said. "Did she ever speak of me?" "Sometimes. She told me about growing up in Virginia, about the big house your family had before the war. Before the war." Eleanor's expression turned wistful. "Everything changed after that. My family lost everything, like so many others. That is why I married Robert Harper and came west. It was a chance to start fresh, build something new. I have not regretted it, even though this life is harder than what I knew growing up. Do you miss Virginia?" "Sometimes, but this is home now." Eleanor leaned forward. "I want you to understand something, Victoria. You are welcome here not out of obligation, but because you are family. That means something to me. I never had children of my own, and now here you are, Lillian's daughter, needing a place to belong. It feels right." Victoria felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me. Just help me keep this ranch running. I saw how you were looking at those account books. Can you work with numbers?" "Yes. My father taught me to keep his business accounts. I am fairly good with figures." Eleanor's eyes lit up. "Then you can help me with the ranch accounts. They are in a terrible state. Our last foreman could barely write his own name, let alone keep proper records. If you can help me make sense of the finances, you will more than earn your keep." "I would be happy to help." They talked late into the evening, Eleanor telling stories about the ranch, about the challenges of running a cattle operation, about the men who worked for her. Victoria learned that Eleanor was respected but not always liked by the ranch hands, some of whom resented taking orders from a woman. The previous foreman had helped maintain her authority, but since his death, things had become more difficult. "That is why I need Mr. Armstrong to work out," Eleanor admitted. "I need a strong foreman who can manage the men and keep this place running smoothly. If he proves himself, I might even consider making him a partner eventually. I am getting older, and I need someone to help carry the load." "He seems very capable," Victoria offered. "He does, and the way he took care of you during that storm speaks well of his character." Eleanor gave Victoria a knowing look. He is a handsome man too, is he not? Victoria felt her cheeks heat. I had not noticed. Oh, you had noticed. Eleanor laughed. No need to be shy about it. There is nothing wrong with appreciating a good-looking man, especially one who treats you with respect. That Mr. Armstrong has kind eyes. I have always trusted people with kind eyes. Victoria thought about Samuel's eyes, about the warmth she had seen there, the genuine concern. He was very kind to me, she admitted. I felt safe with him, which is more than I can say for most men I have known. That is important. Safety, respect, kindness. Those are the foundations of real love, not the flowery poetry and empty promises that men like your Walter Morrison peddle. Eleanor stood and stretched. But it is late, and tomorrow is a work day. We should both get some rest. Victoria helped clean up the kitchen, then followed Eleanor upstairs. At the door to her room, Eleanor paused. I am glad you are here, Victoria. I think this is going to work out well for both of us. I hope so. I know so. Now sleep well. Victoria changed into a nightgown that Martha had left folded on her bed. It was too big, clearly borrowed from someone else, but it was clean and soft. She lay in the darkness, thinking about everything that had happened. Just 2 days ago, she had been in Carson City, terrified and planning her escape. Now she was here safe, with family and a place to belong. And then there was Samuel. She kept thinking about him, about the way he had looked at her across the fire, about his quiet strength and gentle manner. It was foolish to develop feelings for a man she barely knew, especially after her experience with Walter. But there was something different about Samuel, something genuine. She fell asleep thinking about his smile. The next morning, Victoria woke early to the sound of activity outside. She dressed quickly in her traveling dress, now clean and mended thanks to Martha's nighttime efforts. When she came downstairs, she found the kitchen bustling. Martha was cooking breakfast for what looked like an army, and several ranch hands were coming in and out, grabbing food and coffee. There you are, Eleanor said, looking up from where she was pouring coffee. Come eat, then I will show you around the ranch properly. Victoria filled a plate and sat at the corner of the table, trying to stay out of the way of the busy morning. She watched the ranch hands come and go, a rough collection of men in dusty clothes and worn boots. They eyed her curiously but mostly ignored her. Then Samuel walked in and Victoria felt her heart do an odd little skip. He looked different in the morning light, his hair damp from washing, his shirt clean. He saw her and smiled, a genuine expression that lit up his whole face. Morning, Miss Hayes. Sleep well. Very well, thank you, and you? Like a rock. That bunkhouse is basic but comfortable. He got his own plate of food. Mrs. Harper has been showing me around the operation. This is an impressive setup. Eleanor joined them at the table. Mr. Armstrong seems to know his business. I am pleased. I will do my best to live up to your expectations, madam. They ate together, the three of them talking about the ranch work that needed doing. Victoria found herself watching Samuel as he spoke, noticing the way his hands moved, the sound of his voice. She forced herself to focus on the conversation instead. After breakfast, Eleanor took Victoria on a tour of the ranch. They walked through the barns, past the corrals where men were working with horses, out to the fields where cattle grazed. Eleanor explained the operation in detail, and Victoria tried to absorb it all. The cattle are our main income, Eleanor explained. We sell beef to the mining companies and to buyers who ship east. But we also raise horses, and we have contracts to supply the army post with mounts. It is diverse income which helps us weather the slow times. It sounds complicated. It is. But it is also rewarding. I love this land, Victoria. I love building something that will last. Eleanor paused, looking out over the pastures. Robert and I built this together. Sometimes I can still feel him here, watching over it all. Victoria felt a pang of sympathy for her cousin. You must miss him terribly. Every day, but work helps. Keeping this place running is my way of honoring his memory. Eleanor turned back toward the house. Come on, let us go through those accounts. I want to see what you can make of them. They spent the rest of the morning in Eleanor's office, a small room off the kitchen that was crammed with papers and ledgers. Victoria dove into the accounts with something approaching relief. Here was something she understood, something she was good at. Numbers made sense in a way people often did not. It took her only an hour to see the problems. You are losing money on the horse sales, she told Eleanor. The expenses for training and boarding are higher than what you are getting from the army contract. You would be better off selling them to private buyers. Eleanor leaned over her shoulder studying the figures. Are you certain? Look here. The army pays $40 per horse, but by the time you factor in all the costs, you are only making about $5 profit per animal. But when you sell to private buyers, you get $60 to $70 for the same quality horse. But the army contract is guaranteed income. True, but it is not enough income to justify the effort. You would make more focusing on cattle and selling horses only when you get a good private offer. Victoria pointed to another column. And here, you are paying too much for feed. The supplier in Gold Hill is charging you 20% more than the going rate. Eleanor stared at the numbers, then at Victoria. How did you see all this so quickly? It is what I did for my father. He used to say I had a head for business. Victoria felt a flush of pride. If you want, I can reorganize the entire accounting system, make it easier to see where the money is going. Please do. This is exactly the kind of help I need. Eleanor squeezed her shoulder. You are a godsend, Victoria Hayes. They worked together for several hours, Victoria making notes and asking questions. She was so absorbed in the work that she did not notice Samuel until he cleared his throat from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Harper, but we have a situation with the cattle in the north pasture. Looks like someone cut the fence during the night. Several head wandered off. Eleanor's expression darkened. Cut the fence, deliberately, looks that way. Clean cuts, not wear and tear, damn, Eleanor stood. All right. Get some men together and round up the strays. I will come look at the fence myself. I can handle it if you are busy, Samuel offered. No, I want to see it. This is the third incident in a month. Someone is trying to cause trouble. Eleanor turned to Victoria. Keep working on those accounts. I will be back later. After they left, Victoria continued working, but her mind kept drifting to the cut fence. Who would do such a thing? And why? She was still puzzling over it when Martha brought her lunch. You have been working all morning, Martha scolded gently. You need to eat and rest your eyes. Victoria accepted the sandwich gratefully. Martha, do you know why someone would be sabotaging the ranch? Martha's expression grew guarded. Not my place to gossip. I am not asking for gossip. I am family. If there is trouble here, I should know about it. The older woman considered this, then sat down with a sigh. There is a man named Jack Brennan. He owns the ranch to the east of here. He has been trying to buy this place ever since Mr. Harper died. Mrs. Harper keeps refusing, and it makes him angry. Some folks think he is behind the troubles we have been having. What kind of troubles? Broken equipment, stolen cattle, cut fences. Nothing big enough to call the law over, but enough to make running the place harder. Folks in town say he is trying to wear Mrs. Harper down, make her want to sell. That is terrible. It is business, according to him, but it is not right, whatever you call it. Martha stood. You did not hear any of this from me. Of course not. Thank you for telling me. After Martha left, Victoria stared at the account books without really seeing them. She thought about Eleanor, about how hard the woman was working to keep her husband's legacy alive. The idea of someone deliberately trying to destroy that made her angry. She was still thinking about it when Eleanor and Samuel returned that afternoon. Eleanor looked furious. "It was definitely cut," she told Victoria, "and we are missing about 20 head. Samuel and the men will keep looking, but I suspect they are long gone." "Could it be this Brennan person Martha mentioned?" Victoria asked. Eleanor shot Martha a look, but the cook was studiously focused on her dinner preparations. "Probably. Jack Brennan has been a thorn in my side for 2 years, but I cannot prove anything. Why does he want this ranch so badly?" "Water rights. There is a creek that runs through my property and supplies my cattle. If he owned this ranch, he would control the water for miles around. He could charge whatever he wanted to the other ranchers." Eleanor poured herself a whiskey from a bottle in the cabinet. "But I will not sell to him, not while I still have breath in my body." Samuel had been standing quietly by the door. Now he spoke up. "With your permission, madam, I would like to set up night watches. Have a couple of men ride the property lines after dark. Look for trouble." "That is a good idea. Do it." Eleanor downed her whiskey. "I am tired of being pushed around by that man." Over the next few weeks, Victoria settled into life at the ranch. She took over the account books completely, organizing them in a way that made sense. She also began helping Martha with the cooking and housework, despite Eleanor's protests that she was family and not a servant. "I need to feel useful," Victoria insisted. "Besides, I like cooking. It reminds me of helping my mother when I was young." She saw Samuel most days, usually at meals or when he came to discuss ranch business with Eleanor. They were always polite to each other, friendly but maintaining proper distance. Victoria told herself that was for the best. She had no business developing feelings for the foreman. But she could not help the way her heart lifted when she saw him, or how her gaze followed him when he crossed the yard. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Victoria was in the garden behind the house picking vegetables for dinner when Samuel appeared around the corner of the barn. He looked surprised to see her. "Miss Hayes, I did not know anyone was back here. Just gathering vegetables for Martha." Victoria held up her basket of tomatoes and squash. "The garden is thriving." "That it is." Samuel moved closer, and Victoria noticed he was limping slightly. "Are you hurt?" "Just a bruise. Had a disagreement with a horse this morning. The horse won." He grinned ruefully. "Part of the job. You should have Martha look at it. She has a salve that works wonders on bruises." "I might do that." Samuel picked a tomato from a plant, turning it over in his hands. "This is a good garden. Someone put a lot of work into it. Eleanor says her husband planted it for her. She keeps it going in his memory." Victoria watched his face as he looked around the garden. "Do you ever think about settling down, having a garden of your own?" Samuel set the tomato back carefully. "Sometimes. I have been moving around so long, though, I am not sure I would know how to stay still. But yes, sometimes I think about it, having a place that is mine, a home." He looked at her directly. "What about you? Is this home for you now?" "I think so. Eleanor has been so kind, and I feel useful here. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I am doing something that matters." Victoria plucked another tomato, adding it to her basket. "I was so useless in Carson City, just an ornament for my father to display. Here I can actually help with the ranch. You were never useless. Your father loved you, that had value, I suppose, but I prefer being valued for what I can do, not just for existing." She met his eyes. "Do you understand what I mean?" "I do. I have always felt that way. A man should be judged by his actions, not his birth or his connections." Samuel shifted his weight, wincing slightly at the movement. "Miss Hayes, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret running away? Do you wonder if you made the right choice?" Victoria thought about Walter, about the fear she had felt around him, about the darkness she had seen in his eyes. "No, I have never once regretted leaving him. Even if I end up poor and alone for the rest of my life, it is better than being married to a man who frightened me." "You will not end up poor and alone," Samuel said firmly. "You are too smart and too capable for that." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have seen how you work, how you threw yourself into helping Mrs. Harper, how you look for solutions instead of complaining about problems. Those are rare qualities." He smiled at her, and Victoria felt her stomach flutter. "Any man would be lucky to have you, Victoria Hayes." The use of her first name, spoken so warmly, made her blush. "That is kind of you to say." "It is the truth." Samuel took a step closer. "Victoria, I have wanted to tell you something for a while now. Ever since that night in the barn, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. I know it is probably inappropriate, and I know you have no reason to trust men after what you went through, but I need you to know that my feelings for you are real and honorable." Victoria's heart was pounding. "Samuel, you do not have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. I will respect whatever you decide, even if that means keeping my distance." He started to turn away. "Wait." Victoria set down her basket and moved to stand in front of him. "I have been thinking about you too, all the time. I tried to tell myself it was too soon, that I barely know you. But the truth is, I feel safer with you than I have ever felt with anyone." Samuel's expression transformed, hope lighting his eyes. "Truly, truly. That night in the barn, when you kept your distance and respected my fear, when you shared your food and your warmth and expected nothing in return, that meant everything to me. You showed me what a good man looks like. Victoria." He said her name like a prayer. "May I court you properly? With Mrs. Harper's permission and everything done right?" "I would like that very much." Samuel took her hand, his calloused fingers wrapping around hers gently. "I will do this right. I will not rush you or push you. We will take all the time you need." "Thank you." Victoria squeezed his hand. "That means more than you know." They stood there in the garden, holding hands, surrounded by the plants and the warm afternoon sun. It felt right in a way Victoria had never experienced before. This was not the calculated arrangement she had almost made with Walter. This was something real, something honest, something that made her heart sing. "I should probably talk to Mrs. Harper," Samuel said eventually. "Ask her permission formally. She likes you. She told me so." "That is a relief," Samuel grinned. "I would hate to lose my job over this." "I do not think she would fire you for courting me. She might fire you if you hurt me, though. Then I will make sure never to do that." Samuel brought her hand up and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I should get back to work before someone comes looking for me. And I should get these vegetables to Martha before she comes looking for me." They parted reluctantly, but Victoria felt like she was floating as she carried her basket back to the kitchen. Martha took one look at her face and smiled knowingly. "So Mr. Armstrong finally said something, did he?" "Is it that obvious, child? Anyone with eyes could see how that man looks at you, and how you look at him." Martha took the vegetables and began washing them. "He is a good one, that Samuel Armstrong. Treats the men fairly, works harder than anyone else, always respectful. You could do a lot worse." "I know. I feel very lucky." That evening after dinner, Samuel asked to speak with Eleanor privately. Victoria waited anxiously in her room, trying to focus on a book, but reading the same page over and over without comprehension. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Eleanor knocked on her door. "Come in." Eleanor entered, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled. "Mr. Armstrong asked my permission to court you. And I said yes, of course. He is a good man, Victoria. Honest and hardworking. I think he will treat you well." Victoria jumped up and hugged her cousin. "Thank you. I know it is fast, but when you know, you know. I knew I loved Robert 3 days after meeting him." Eleanor pulled back, her expression turning serious. "But you have to be sure, Victoria. After what you went through with that Morrison man, I do not want you rushing into anything out of gratitude or fear of being alone. It is not that. Samuel makes me feel things I have never felt before, safe and valued and cherished. When he looks at me, I feel like I am the most important person in the world." Eleanor smiled. "That is how it should be. That is how Robert used to make me feel." She touched Victoria's cheek gently. "Then you have my blessing. Court him properly, get to know him, and if it leads to marriage, well, I will be very happy to have you both here permanently." The courtship began in earnest after that. Samuel and Victoria took walks together in the evenings after the work-day ended. He showed her the ranch, teaching her about cattle and horses and the rhythms of ranch life. She shared stories about her childhood, about her parents, about the dreams she had once had before her father's death had changed everything. They talked about everything and nothing. Samuel told her about his childhood in Arkansas, about learning to ride from his father before the man's dark moods had taken over. He spoke of his mother with deep love and his sisters with fond exasperation. He shared his dreams of one day owning his own small ranch, nothing grand, just a place that was his. Victoria talked about the books she loved to read, about her passion for numbers and organization, about the strange satisfaction she got from balancing accounts and finding solutions to financial puzzles. She admitted her fears about the future, about what would happen if Walter somehow found her. "He will not," Samuel assured her. "And even if he tries, he will have to go through me first, and through Mrs. Harper and through every man on this ranch. You are not alone anymore, Victoria." His protectiveness warmed her, but she appreciated that it did not feel suffocating. He did not try to control her or limit her. He simply offered his strength as support, not as a cage. About 6 weeks into their courtship, trouble came to the ranch again. This time it was worse than cut fences. The barn caught fire in the middle of the night, and only quick action by the ranch hands kept it from spreading to the other buildings. 2 horses were injured, though thankfully no one was killed. Eleanor was furious. This was arson. Someone deliberately set this fire. Samuel had been one of the first to respond to the fire, and his shirt was singed, his hands blistered from handling hot timbers. "I saw someone riding away to the east. Could not make out who it was in the dark, but they were definitely heading toward the Brennan Ranch. That is it. I am going to confront that man." Eleanor reached for her coat. "Madam, maybe that is not a good idea right now," Samuel said carefully. "You are angry and rightfully so, but going over there in this state might make things worse. He burned my barn, and we will prove it and see him punished. But we need to be smart about this. Let me ride into town tomorrow, talk to the sheriff, see if there is anyone who saw anything. We build a case that will actually stick." Eleanor looked like she wanted to argue, but finally she nodded. "Fine. But if the sheriff does not do something, I will handle this my own way." Victoria had been watching the fire from the house, terrified that Samuel would be hurt. Now she went to him, reaching for his burned hands. "You need to let me treat these. I am fine. You are burned. Do not be stubborn." She led him into the kitchen where Martha kept her medical supplies. She cleaned his hands gently and applied salve, wrapping them in clean bandages. Samuel watched her face the whole time. "You are very good at taking care of people," he observed. "I had practice with my father. He was often ill toward the end." Victoria tied off the last bandage. "You frightened me tonight when I saw you going into that burning barn. I had to help get the horses out. I know, and I am proud of you for being brave, but I also realized something. If something happened to you, if you were hurt or killed, I do not know what I would do. You have become so important to me, Samuel. He cupped her face with his bandaged hands, tilting her head up to look at him. "Nothing is going to happen to me. I am too stubborn to die in a barn fire. Promise me you will be careful." "I promise." He leaned down slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away. When she did not, he kissed her softly. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Victoria's eyes drifted closed and she leaned into him, her hands resting on his chest. When they pulled apart, Samuel was smiling. "I have wanted to do that for weeks. Why did you wait so long? I wanted to be sure you were ready, that you wanted it too." "I did, I do." Victoria kissed him again, more confidently this time. "I love you, Samuel Armstrong." His eyes widened. "You do?" "Yes. I think I have loved you since that night in the barn when you wrapped me in blankets and shared your food and made me feel safe. I just did not have the words for it then." "Victoria Hayes, I love you too. I love your strength and your kindness and your brilliant mind. I love how you care for people and how you throw yourself into everything you do." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I want to marry you, not right now, I know it is too soon. But someday when you are ready, I want you to be my wife." "Yes," Victoria said simply. "Yes to all of it." They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, while outside the ranch hands worked to put out the last of the fire and secure the damaged barn. The future felt uncertain with the threat of Jack Brennan hanging over them, but in that moment, Victoria felt nothing but joy. The next morning, Samuel rode into Gold Hill to speak with the sheriff. He returned several hours later with disappointing news. The sheriff had agreed that the fire was likely arson, but without witnesses or proof that Brennan was involved, there was nothing he could do. Basically, he said to keep an eye out and report anything suspicious, Samuel told Eleanor and Victoria. He did say he would ride out to the Brennan ranch and ask some questions, but I do not think it will amount to much. So we are just supposed to wait for the next attack. Eleanor was pacing her office like a caged animal. "Wait until he does something worse. We could sell," Victoria said quietly. Both Eleanor and Samuel turned to stare at her. "Hear me out. Not to Brennan, obviously, but what if we sold to someone else? Someone with the resources to stand up to Brennan, or better yet, someone he could not bully, sell the ranch." Eleanor looked stricken. "This is my home. Robert and I built this together. I know, but is it worth dying for? Because that is where this is heading. The attacks are getting worse." "What if next time someone is killed?" Samuel was nodding slowly. "Miss Hayes has a point. If Brennan is willing to commit arson, he might be willing to do worse." Eleanor sank into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 40-plus years. "I cannot believe I am even considering this." "Robert would be so disappointed." "No, he would not," Victoria said firmly. "He would want you safe, and besides, you could use the money from the sale to start fresh somewhere else, somewhere away from Jack Brennan." They discussed it for hours, weighing the options. By evening, Eleanor had made her decision. "I will put out feelers, see if anyone is interested in buying, but I will not give this place away cheaply. I want fair value." "That is reasonable," Samuel agreed. Over the next few weeks, several potential buyers came to look at the ranch. Some were speculators from San Francisco. Others were established ranchers looking to expand. Eleanor rejected most of them for various reasons. Too low an offer, too interested in stripping the land, too connected to Brennan. Then a surprising offer came in. The Army, which had been buying horses from Eleanor for years, expressed interest in purchasing the entire ranch to use as a breeding and training facility. The offer was more than fair, and it came with the stipulation that Eleanor could stay on as manager for as long as she wanted. "I would still be running the ranch," Eleanor told Victoria and Samuel as they reviewed the offer. "But I would not have to worry about the financial burden or about someone like Brennan trying to force me out. The Army would not stand for that kind of harassment." It sounds like a good deal, Victoria said, and you would not have to leave your home. What about you two? Eleanor looked between them. Samuel, you came here to be foreman. If the army takes over, they might bring in their own management. The offer includes you keeping your current staff, Victoria pointed out, reading the fine print. Including foreman, so Samuel would still have his job. And Victoria could continue managing the accounts, Eleanor added. The army is always looking for competent bookkeepers. In fact, this could be a real opportunity for both of you. Samuel reached over and took Victoria's hand. What do you think? I think it solves a lot of problems. Eleanor gets to keep her home, you keep your job, and I can keep helping with the ranch work. And most importantly, we would all be safe from Brennan. Eleanor spent several days considering the offer, discussing it with her lawyer and the ranch hands. In the end, she accepted. The sale would go through in 3 months, giving her time to prepare and the army time to arrange their management structure. Jack Brennan was furious when he heard the news. He rode over to the ranch the day after the announcement, his face red with anger. Eleanor met him on the porch with Samuel standing beside her and several ranch hands positioned strategically around the yard. You are making a mistake, Brennan snarled. That ranch should be mine. Well, it is not, Eleanor said coldly. It is going to the army and there is nothing you can do about it. Now get off my property before I have you removed. You will regret this, Brennan threatened. Samuel stepped forward. Mr. Brennan, I think you should leave. Now. Brennan glared at Samuel, clearly considering his options. Then he seemed to realize he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. He turned his horse and rode away, but not before spitting on the ground at Eleanor's feet. Charming man, Eleanor said dryly. Well, that is done. Samuel, have the men keep watch tonight just in case. He might try something stupid. But Brennan did not try anything else. With the army's involvement, any attack on the ranch would be an attack on military property. Even Brennan was not foolish enough to risk that kind of trouble. With the threat of Brennan finally neutralized, life at the ranch settled into a peaceful routine. Victoria continued working on the accounts, preparing detailed reports for the army's review. Samuel managed the daily operations, working with Eleanor to ensure a smooth transition. And in the evenings, Victoria and Samuel spent time together, their courtship deepening into something profound and lasting. 3 months after the barn fire, on a beautiful autumn evening, Samuel asked Victoria to walk with him up to a rise overlooking the ranch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They stood together, looking out over the land that had become their home. Victoria, Samuel said, his voice suddenly nervous. I have something I need to ask you. Victoria turned to find him holding a simple gold ring. Samuel, I know we have only been courting a few months, and I know you said you wanted to take things slow, but I cannot wait any longer. Victoria Hayes, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You make me want to be a better man. You make me believe in the future. Will you marry me? Tears sprang to Victoria's eyes, but they were happy tears. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. Samuel slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and hope into that kiss. Victoria kissed him back just as passionately, her arms wrapped around his neck, her heart soaring. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and laughing. I was so nervous, Samuel admitted. I thought you might say it was too soon. A few months ago, maybe. But now I am ready. I know what I want, and it is you. It is a life with you. They walked back to the ranch hand in hand, both of them glowing with happiness. Eleanor took one look at Victoria's face and broke into a huge smile. He asked you. How did you know? He asked my permission 3 days ago. I have been dying keeping the secret. Eleanor hugged them both. "Congratulations! I am so happy for you both." They planned a small wedding for late November, just before the army officially took over the ranch. Eleanor insisted on hosting it at the ranch house, and Martha threw herself into planning a proper celebration. The ranch hands all pitched in to help, building an arbor in the garden where Victoria had first admitted her feelings to Samuel. Victoria wrote to her mother's relatives back east, informing them of her engagement. She did not expect any of them to make the long journey for the wedding, but she wanted them to know she had found happiness. To her surprise, several of them sent gifts and warm congratulations. There was no word from Carson City, no sign that Walter had tried to find her. Victoria chose to believe that he had moved on to some other unfortunate woman. She tried not to feel guilty about that, tried to tell herself that at least she had escaped. The weeks leading up to the wedding flew by. Victoria worked on her trousseau with Martha's help, sewing a simple but elegant dress from cream-colored silk that Eleanor provided. Samuel worked with the ranch hands to build a small cabin on the property where he and Victoria would live after the wedding. Eleanor had offered them rooms in the main house, but they wanted their own space, a place that was just theirs. The night before the wedding, Eleanor insisted on a traditional separation. Samuel stayed in the bunkhouse with the men while Victoria remained in the main house with Eleanor and Martha. They sat up late talking, drinking tea and laughing. "Are you nervous?" Eleanor asked. Victoria considered the question. "No, not about marrying Samuel. I am nervous about the wedding itself, about standing up in front of everyone, but about the marriage. I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "That is a good sign," Martha said. "A woman should go to her marriage with confidence, not fear." "I know some people will say we rushed into this," Victoria admitted, "that we barely know each other." "Those people do not understand that sometimes you just know," Eleanor said firmly. "I knew Robert was the man I would marry within a week of meeting him. We were married 3 months later, and we had 17 wonderful years together before he passed. Not one day of it was wasted." The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, with just a hint of autumn crispness in the air. Martha helped Victoria dress, arranging her hair and pinning on the small veil that had belonged to Eleanor. When Victoria looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the confident woman staring back at her. She was so different from the frightened girl who had fled Carson City all those months ago. The ceremony took place in the garden at 4 in the afternoon, when the light was soft and golden. About 30 people attended, including all the ranch hands, several townspeople from Gold Hill, and the army officers who would be taking over the ranch. A traveling minister who happened to be passing through town agreed to perform the ceremony. Victoria stood under the flower-covered arbor, her hand trembling slightly as she held a small bouquet of wildflowers. Then Samuel appeared, and everything else faded away. He looked handsome in a new suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes locked on hers with such love and devotion that she felt her heart might burst. They spoke their vows clearly, both of them meaning every word. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her gently, and the assembled crowd burst into applause and cheers. Victoria laughed against his lips, happier than she had ever been. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Martha had outdone herself with the food, preparing a feast that the ranch hands devoured with enthusiasm. Someone brought out a fiddle, and there was dancing in the yard under the stars. Samuel waltzed Victoria around awkwardly, both of them laughing as they tried to remember the steps. "I am not very good at this," Samuel admitted. "Neither am I. We can be terrible together." "I like the sound of that. Terrible together for the rest of our lives." Finally, as the party began to wind down, Eleanor caught Victoria's eye and nodded toward the small cabin. Victoria blushed but nodded back. She and Samuel said their goodbyes and slipped away, walking hand in hand to their new home. The cabin was small but cozy, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area and a bedroom in the back. The ranch hands had stocked it with basic furniture, and Martha had left a basket of food and wine. Samuel lit the lamps, filling the space with warm light. "So," he said, turning to face Victoria, "here we are, married." "Married," Victoria repeated, still getting used to the sound of it. "Mrs. Samuel Armstrong. How does it feel?" She moved into his arms, resting her head against his chest. "It feels right. It feels like coming home." Samuel held her close, one hand stroking her hair. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy, Victoria. That is my promise to you." "You already make me happy, just by being you, by loving me the way you do." She looked up at him. "I am not afraid anymore, Samuel. You helped me find my courage again." He kissed her then, slowly and deeply, and Victoria felt herself melting into him. This was nothing like the chaste kisses they had shared during their courtship. This was the kiss of a husband for his wife, full of passion and promise and love. Victoria kissed him back just as intensely, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body pressed against his. They moved together to the bedroom, helping each other out of their wedding finery, exploring each other with gentle hands and whispered endearments. It was Victoria's first time, and Samuel was patient and tender, making sure she felt safe and cherished. The physical union of their marriage was beautiful and profound, a natural extension of the emotional and spiritual bond they had already formed. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the bed, talking quietly in the darkness. Samuel traced patterns on Victoria's bare shoulder, his touch making her shiver pleasantly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different my life is now from what I thought it would be. 6 months ago, I thought I would marry Walter and live in Carson City and be miserable. Now I am here with you on this ranch, doing work I love. It is like I am living someone else's life, except it is mine." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not run away, if you had married him?" Victoria shuddered. "I try not to. I think he would have killed me eventually, the way he killed his first wife, and I would never have met you." She kissed his chest, right over his heart. "Running away was the best decision I ever made. I am glad you ran, and I am glad you ran in the direction of Gold Hill." Samuel pulled her closer. "I am glad for that storm that brought us together." "My cowboy in the storm," Victoria murmured, already half asleep. "You became my calm in every tempest." "And you became my home," Samuel replied. "My peace, my everything." They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, content and complete. The next morning, they woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of roosters crowing. Victoria stretched, feeling wonderfully sore and thoroughly loved. Samuel was already awake, watching her with a soft smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Armstrong." "Good morning, husband." Victoria liked the way that sounded. "What time is it?" "Early still. But I have to go check on the cattle soon. First day of married life, and I still have work to do. I should help Eleanor with the final transition preparations. The army takes over officially next week." But neither of them moved, content to stay in bed just a little longer. Finally, duty called, and they reluctantly got dressed and ready for the day. Samuel walked Victoria back to the main house, stealing kisses along the way like they were still courting. Eleanor was in the kitchen with Martha, and both women smiled knowingly when they saw Victoria's glowing face. "Someone looks happy," Eleanor teased. "Very happy," Victoria confirmed, not even trying to hide her blush. "Good. That is how it should be." Eleanor poured her a cup of coffee. "Now let us go over the final inventory reports. The Army representatives will be here tomorrow to inspect everything. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the following months. The Army took over the ranch smoothly, with Eleanor staying on as manager as agreed. Samuel continued as foreman, earning respect from both the ranch hands and the new military overseers. Victoria managed the accounts and helped with administrative work, her organizational skills proving invaluable. The transition brought some changes. The ranch focused more heavily on horse breeding and training for military use. New facilities were built, and additional staff was hired. But the core of the operation remained the same, and Eleanor made sure the original ranch hands kept their jobs. Jack Brennan tried to cause trouble a few more times, but with the Army's backing, his efforts were quickly shut down. Eventually, he gave up and sold his own ranch, moving south to try his luck elsewhere. Eleanor threw a small celebration the day she heard he had left Nevada for good. "Good riddance to bad rubbish," she declared, raising a glass of whiskey and toast. "May we never see his face again." Victoria and Samuel's marriage grew stronger with each passing day. They learned each other's habits and quirks, had their first fights and their first makeups, built a life together in their small cabin. Samuel proved to be a devoted husband, always making sure Victoria felt loved and valued. Victoria discovered depths of passion and courage in herself she had never known existed. About 8 months into their marriage, Victoria began feeling ill in the mornings. Martha noticed immediately. "You are with child," the older woman said matter-of-factly one morning when Victoria came to the kitchen looking pale. "How can you tell? I have been around long enough to recognize the signs. Does Mr. Armstrong know? I have not told him yet. I wanted to be sure first." "You are sure?" "Trust me on this." Martha smiled gently. "Congratulations, child. You will make a wonderful mother." Victoria told Samuel that evening as they sat together on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset. His reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He whooped with joy, picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently, worried he had been too rough. "Are you all right? Is the baby all right? Should you be standing? Maybe you should sit down." Victoria laughed at his concern. "Samuel, I am fine. I am only a few weeks along. I am not fragile. But you are carrying our child. That makes you precious cargo." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby, I can hardly believe it. Believe it. In about 7 months we are going to be parents." They told Eleanor the next day, and she was equally delighted. "A baby on the ranch. Oh, Victoria, I am so happy for you both." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Victoria continued working on the accounts for as long as she could, though Eleanor eventually insisted she take it easier. Samuel became almost comically protective, constantly worrying about Victoria overdoing things. "I am pregnant, not dying," Victoria would remind him gently. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "But none of those women were my wife," Samuel would respond, making her laugh and kiss him. In early spring, about 1.5 years after that fateful storm had brought them together, Victoria went into labor. Martha and Eleanor attended her, along with the doctor from Gold Hill. Samuel paced outside for hours, driving the ranch hands crazy with his nervous energy. Finally, after a long but uncomplicated labor, Victoria gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Robert Samuel Armstrong, after Eleanor's late husband and his father. When Samuel first held his son, tears streamed down his face. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered, looking at Victoria with so much love she felt her own eyes fill with tears. "You are perfect. Thank you for this gift." "We made him together," Victoria said, exhausted but happy. "He is half you." Little Robert was a good baby, healthy and happy. He had Samuel's dark hair and Victoria's blue eyes, and within months it was clear he had inherited his father's sunny disposition. The ranch hands doted on him, taking turns holding him and making silly faces to earn his smiles. Eleanor was a devoted honorary grandmother, always ready to watch Robert while Victoria and Samuel took some time for themselves. "I never had children of my own," she told Victoria one day as they sat together, watching Robert play on a blanket in the garden. "But I have you and Samuel and now little Robert. That feels like family to me." "It is family," Victoria assured her. "You gave me a home when I had nowhere else to go. You are family in every way that matters." As Robert grew, so did the ranch. The Army's investment paid off, and the operation thrived. Samuel was promoted to senior foreman, overseeing not just the daily operations, but also helping plan long-term strategy. Victoria took on more administrative responsibilities, becoming the official bookkeeper and business manager for the entire facility. They prospered. The small cabin was expanded to accommodate their growing family. 2 years after Robert was born, Victoria gave birth to a daughter they named Lillian Eleanor, after both their mothers. 2 years after that, another son arrived, whom they named Thomas. Life was full and busy and wonderful. Samuel would come home from long days working the ranch to find his children running to greet him, his wife smiling from the doorway. Victoria would look at her 3 healthy children, at her kind husband, at the home they had built together, and marvel at how far she had come from that terrified woman running through the storm. You ever think about what would have happened if that storm had not come? Samuel asked her one evening. They were sitting on their porch, watching their children play in the yard while the sun set behind the mountains. "If you had made it to Gold Hill without stopping, if we had never met," Victoria thought about it, "I think I would have survived. Eleanor would have taken me in and I would have found my way, but I would not have been happy, not the way I am now." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You did not just give me shelter from the storm, Samuel. You became my home, my safe harbor in every tempest." "And you saved me too," Samuel said, kissing the top of her head. "I was just drifting before I met you, moving from place to place without any real purpose. You gave me a reason to put down roots. You gave me a family and a future. You gave me everything that matters." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. Robert, now 7, was teaching 5-year-old Lillian how to throw a rope at a fence post. 3-year-old Thomas toddled after them, determined to keep up with his older siblings. "I have been thinking," Victoria said. "Now that the children are getting older and the ranch is running smoothly, maybe I could start teaching. There are several families in the area whose children need education. I could hold classes here, maybe turn the old storage shed into a schoolroom." "That is a wonderful idea," Samuel said enthusiastically. "You have such a gift for explaining things. You taught me better bookkeeping in a month than I learned in years on my own. Then I will talk to Eleanor about it tomorrow. We could offer basic education to the ranch workers' children too. Reading, writing, arithmetic, skills that will help them build better futures. See, this is why I love you, always thinking about how to help people, how to make things better." Samuel pulled her close. "Though I hope you are not planning to take on too much. I know you. You will have 20 students and be running yourself ragged within a month." "I will start small," Victoria promised. "Just a few students to begin with. I have learned my limits." The school became a reality within a few months. Victoria converted the old shed into a cheerful classroom with Eleanor's help, and started with 6 students, including her own Robert. Word spread, and within a year, she was teaching 15 children ranging in age from 6 to 14. She loved the work, loved seeing young minds grasp new concepts, loved knowing she was making a real difference in these children's futures. Years passed peacefully. The children grew. Robert proved to have a gift with horses, spending every free moment in the corrals with his father. Lillian inherited her mother's love of books and numbers, often helping Victoria with the school accounts. Thomas was the dreamer of the family, always wandering off to explore or building elaborate imaginary worlds. When Robert turned 18, he officially joined the ranch as a junior horse trainer, working under his father's supervision. Samuel could not have been more proud. Watching his son work with a difficult horse, seeing the patience and skill the boy displayed, brought tears to his eyes. "He is a natural," Samuel told Victoria that evening, "better than I was at his age." "He learned from the best," Victoria said, squeezing his hand. "You taught him well." "We taught him well. He has your kindness and intelligence along with whatever skill he got from me." Lillian, at 16, was helping Victoria run the school full-time now. She had her mother's patience and natural teaching ability. Victoria watched her daughter with pride, knowing she would be able to hand over the school to Lillian one day. Thomas, at 14, was still finding his way. He loved the ranch, but did not have his brother's gift with horses or his sister's academic inclinations. He spent his time drawing and painting, capturing the beauty of the Nevada landscape in watercolors and charcoal. "He is an artist," Eleanor said, looking at Thomas's latest painting, a stunning sunset over the ranch. "Have you thought about sending him to San Francisco for proper training?" Victoria and Samuel discussed it at length. Finally, they decided to give Thomas the choice. He could stay on the ranch and find his place there, or they would send him to California to study art. "I want to stay," Thomas said without hesitation when they presented the option to him. "I want to paint this place, these people. I want to capture what it means to live here." "You cannot do that from some city school." They agreed, and Thomas continued his self-taught artistic education, his paintings becoming increasingly skilled and evocative. He began selling pieces to visitors to the area, building a small reputation as a Western landscape painter. Eleanor lived to see all 3 children grown, but she passed peacefully in her sleep when Victoria was 42 years old. She left the ranch completely to the Army, as per her agreement, but she left her personal savings to Victoria and Samuel, ensuring they would be financially secure for the rest of their lives. "She was like a mother to me," Victoria said at the funeral, standing beside Eleanor's grave next to where Robert Harper was buried. "She gave me a home when I had nothing. She gave me a family." Samuel held her as she cried, his own tears falling for the woman who had given them both so much. Life continued. The children married and had children of their own. Robert married a rancher's daughter from Gold Hill and gave them 3 grandchildren. Lillian married a teacher from Virginia City, and they settled near the ranch, giving Victoria and Samuel 2 more grandchildren. Thomas surprised everyone by marrying a Paiute woman named Naomi who worked as a translator for the Army. They had 1 daughter whom they named Eleanor, and Thomas's paintings of Paiute life and culture became increasingly sought after. Victoria and Samuel grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies slowing down but their love never dimming. Samuel eventually retired from active ranch management, though he still spent his days with the horses, unable to stay away from the work he loved. Victoria handed over the school to Lillian completely, though she still substituted occasionally when needed. They spent more and more time on their porch, watching their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had once played. They told stories about the old days, about the storm that had brought them together, about building their life from nothing. "You have any regrets?" Victoria asked Samuel one evening. They were both in their 60s now, watching the sunset paint the Nevada sky in brilliant colors. Samuel thought about it seriously before answering. "None. Not about marrying you, not about the life we built, not about any of it. Oh, I have made mistakes along the way, of course, but regrets? No, this life with you has been better than anything I ever imagined for myself. I feel the same way. Victoria leaned against him, fitting perfectly into his side the way she had for more than 30 years. I was so frightened that day I ran away from Carson City. I thought my life was over, but it was actually just beginning. You showed me that. We showed each other. You taught me that I could have a home, a family, roots. I had been drifting so long I did not think I could ever settle, but you made me want to stay in one place. He kissed her temple gently. You became my anchor, Victoria, and you became my shelter, my calm in every storm. Victoria smiled, repeating the words she had first spoken to him decades ago. My cowboy who found me in the Tempest and gave me peace. They sat together as the sun sank lower, painting the world in gold and crimson. Their children and grandchildren would be arriving soon for Sunday dinner, filling the house with noise and laughter. The ranch would continue operating, providing work and purpose for another generation. The school would keep teaching children, giving them opportunities for better futures. Everything they had built together would continue long after they were gone. Their love had created something lasting, something real, something beautiful. The storm that had brought them together all those years ago was long past. But the calm Samuel had given Victoria, the peace they had found in each other, would last forever. Their story, begun in a barn during a tempest, had become a legacy of love, family, and home, and that was more than enough. It was everything.